the world is, as Thomas Friedman famously said, such a flat place at this point, and every country is doing business with each other. Even the countries that are not getting along are doing business with each other. So you could put down a tariff meant to eventually help an American company, but that at least in the short term, and maybe even a little further out, could potentially damage that company. And that's why tariffs are just so thorny right now, because we are, especially with Canada and Mexico, essentially borderless in the way that we do trade.
Yeah, now Nvidia, the drop seems to be in a reaction to that, but you would think that, well, in terms of its 12-year price performance, Nvidia has outperformed only 32% of all other stocks on the Investor Business Daily's database. But 4 weeks ago, it had outperformed 86% of the stock. So it was the highest flyer by far, and now it's down to middle of the pack in just a short time, even though it has introduced what appears to be a hugely popular new product, its latest chip. Was it Blackwell? Yeah, it's a screamer, and everybody wants it. We'll get to it in a second. Its impact out there, and yet that hasn't seemed to do very much for Nvidia's value. Hi, and welcome to the Silicon Insider Podcast. Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. Thank you.
Another atmospheric river is bearing down on Silicon Valley. So I guess it's good for the plants.
Absolutely.
Not for commuting.
No.
Anyway, let's start with the Dow. We're really starting with tariffs because Wednesday evening, President Trump announced that he was now going to implement those tariffs on automobiles. And it's important to us because it sent a shudder through, since automobiles basically are now, computers on wheels. It sent a shockwave over NASDAQ into the semiconductor industry, especially because of the damage it might do to sales and revenues of chips to the auto companies. So several automakers shares declined after the announcement of the 25% tariff. GM pulled back more than 7%. Ford slipped nearly 4%, but Tesla added 0.4% because it's largely domestic production. And I haven't been able to look it up, but I suspect some foreign automobile makers with plants in the United States came out fairly undamaged by all this.
Well, it's interesting because that's where an interesting issue comes in. This is a tax on foreign imported autos and auto parts. But you're right, Honda, Toyota, many foreign companies build here in America, and General Motors, Ford, even some Tesla, but more the other guys, import auto parts. So this is really going to hit a lot of companies, whether foreign or domestic, depending on not only where you build the car, but where you import the auto parts themselves. So it was a little strange to see General Motors stock go down 6-7% as soon as the tariff announcement was made, while Tesla went up. You're thinking, they're both American car companies, but one does have a strong relationship with auto parts makers in places like Mexico and Canada. We're already seeing tariffs there, now 25% added on. So this could get expensive. And the fact that it happens really soon, on April 3rd, means that by the time some of you are listening to this, you could go to your local car lot and see the same cars side by side, but with about a $5,000 to $10,000 difference, depending on it.
Yeah, watch that guy out there slapping a new sticker over every single one of them.
Right.
And then President Trump said something else that was unpredictable, that he might be more lenient on China, willing to reduce the tariff sum on China, which ostensibly was what this was originally all about, if China will further a deal on TikTok. Right. So now we're seeing money, but we're also seeing watches and rings and deeds to houses being thrown in on the poker table too.
I think that
I'd like to be able to predict something, but I have no idea what's actually going on.
It would be foolish to try to predict, and I think your poker analogy is a good one. Frankly, this is a deal. Remember, with Canada, it was fentanyl crossing the border, even though there wasn't much fentanyl crossing the border. And I think with China, a lot of these tariffs are, hey, we really want to get hold of TikTok, and so we're seeing once again, even a couple months later, some of these tariffs being exposed as essentially poker chips, just like you said.
Yeah. And you never know how the game ends until the game ends. So when everybody finally puts down all their cards. So I guess we're just waiting. In the meantime, Nvidia uh, still seems to be a slightly troubled stock. I don't want to say a troubled company because they're doing so darn well. In fact, well, their stock price dropped nearly 6% on Wednesday, and that was because of the possibility that uh, the administration was going to embargo several other companies in China that are a strong market for Nvidia. But some analysts said, well, that would be a terrible mistake because you're then empowering Huawei and some other company, DeepSeek, in China to take over that market. So it's hard to know there either.
Right. Again, the world is, as Thomas Friedman famously said, such a flat place at this point, and every country is doing business with each other. Even the countries that are not getting along are doing business with each other. So you
Yeah.
could put down a tariff meant to eventually help an American company, but that, at least in the short term, and maybe even a little further out, could potentially damage that company. And that's why tariffs are just so thorny right now, because we are, especially with Canada and Mexico, essentially borderless in the way that we do trade.
Yeah. Now, Nvidia, the drop seems to be in a reaction to that, but you would think that, well, in terms of its 12-year price performance, Nvidia has outperformed only 32% of all other stocks on the Investor Business Daily's database. But 4 weeks ago, it had outperformed 86% of the stock. So it was the highest flyer by far, and now it's down to middle of the pack in just a short time, even though it has introduced what appears to be a hugely popular new product, its latest chip. Was it Blackwell? Yeah, it's a screamer and everybody wants it. We'll get to it in a second. Its impact out there. And yet that hasn't seemed to do very much for NVIDIA's value.
Well, I still think a lot of people are waiting not only on tariffs, but on AI to see if the promise will come true. I think a lot of NVIDIA's stock gains, and they've been monstrous over the last few years, have been on the promise, the future promise of AI and chips and that are needed for that. And so far, we've seen some seedlings of that growth. For example, OpenAI just earlier this week saying they thought their profit would triple. That's healthy. CoreWeave just priced its IPO. You and I are speaking on Thursday evening, $40 a share, a little below the range, but still the
Yeah,
idea that we're getting.
so they've now priced it. They were going to do that this evening.
Yeah, they did price it, and again, just the idea that
They
this
seem to
kind
be
of
kind of drawing. I mean, that was supposed to be the bellwether stock, right?
I mean, so much as so, I would say Nvidia has been the bellwether stock, and maybe Microsoft the bellwether stock. But for a new one
Yeah.
to go public, I think is fairly significant. And so the companies that people have been watching very closely, CoreWeave and OpenAI, both had encouraging news this week. It'll be interesting to see because by the time this goes to print and people are listening to it, CoreWeave will be a public company,
Yeah.
and we'll see how much excitement they get in those first few days.
Well, though, there'd probably be that usual profit taking where the VCs unload their stock on unwitting civilians who think they're going to get a great deal, who then take the fall. Then the VCs, investors come back in and take it back up. But I noticed that they had retracted a little bit on their price expectations and the number of shares, uh, which suggested that they thought that the demand might be a little soft for an IPO right now. I mean, it's not like boom, we get this gigantic IPO and the whole world rushes in and everybody's going public and all that. I don't see that boom anytime soon.
No, especially on a company like this it's got promise, but it's not got profit. And
Well, it's the cloud company of Nvidia, right?
yeah, essentially, they do a lot of business with them. And you're right about the lowering of expectations. The range that CoreWeave was going to go out at was between 47 and 55, and they priced at 40, so significantly lower. They did bank $1.5 billion. That's not small change. That's good for a small company. But you're right. The appetite for AI right now has been, I would argue, investors willing to take risk because it's fast moving, it's sexy, it's exciting, but it's certainly not the kind of slow churn, cranking out a dividend kind of company that you like to invest in for the long term. This is all happening so fast and without profits so far, for the most part. So we'll see where they go from here.
Interestingly, a lot of AI oriented companies outside of Nvidia had a pretty good week for the most part. I mean, Oracle went up, especially the companies that are doing custom AI chips and not wide market ones like Broadcom. Broadcom is having a monster year, but it well grew 77% from the year prior. But just this week they had a good week. Marvell grew a little bit. Some of these other companies that are more focused on types of AI chips seem to be doing better. That suggests the adoption curve is sophisticated companies that need it, and they're buying the custom chips. And the rest of the world, all of us, we're going to come roaring in pretty soon once we really find applications for it.
Right. But just what you say, once we find an application for it, and we haven't yet, right?
Yeah. Though I will note that OpenAI, their CEO today or yesterday, said that they're having trouble because these chips, bundling them together and firing them off and everybody wanting to play with them is actually melting some of their servers and chips. I think that was a little hyperbolic, but it's kind of a fun thing to think that these AI is getting so powerful, it's starting to melt these server farms, setting them on fire.
Yeah, and once again, he's responding to the way to take AI and once again make it graphic. In this case, some cute pictures so that you could take a picture of you or you and your girlfriend or your dog or whatever and turn it into a nice image. And the last time we saw that, everybody's Twitter feed was filled with nothing but that. And that was kind of like what Thursday was just everyone posting these pictures. And so, yeah, Sam Altman comes on and says, whoa, glad you're really enjoying this. But so many of you are enjoying this so much of the time, we have to dial it back. And
Yeah.
what does that tell
It
you
reminds
about
me of
AI?
the Victoria's Secret shutting down the internet in its early days. Yeah, same kind of hype, more PR than reality.
Right. And what does it tell you, Mike, that we get something consumers are interested in en masse and they have to shut it down? Like they finally found a way to get consumers to like this cute, silly thing, and whoops, it's melting our servers. Well, that means they're not ready for the consumer world yet. So let's, back off and give this a little bit of time before we call it the next big consumer thing.
Yeah, well, OpenAI had some really good numbers again. I mean, they're predicting annual sales. I'm looking it up here, but it's a considerable number.
Well, I think they said they triple their revenue in a year.
Yeah, triple the revenues, but they're well into the 100 billion, something like that. I mean, that's astounding for a company that young.
We'll see. We'll see what their eventual profit looks like. We'll see if they can, turn a profit. But revenues are going up because it may not be quite the consumer product yet, but a lot of people are curious about it, and a lot of businesses really think they need it, and so it is front and center right now.
Then in the meantime, small businesses, their confidence is way down. I mean, we're getting weird recessionary signals. Microsoft saying that it's expecting its AI data center business to slow next year. There's a lot of factors out there, company closures, people leaving the workforce for good. There's a lot of recessionary indicators going on that seem to be contracyclical to the stock market. The stock market still seems to be doing, I mean, it's all over the map, but it still seems to be fairly robust in a lot of areas. But in the other economic indicators in our economy, red lights are starting to flash. What do you think? I mean, is this the recession year that we've been thinking is coming for the last 10 years?
I don't think it's what we thought was coming. I mean, I don't think anyone thought we would pull ourselves out of a pretty steep inflationary curve. I mean, pull ourselves out of it, only to
Yeah.
throw ourselves back in with tariffs. Who saw that coming? I don't know that we would say after years of robust job growth, we would fire hundreds of thousands of workers. Like literally on purpose, the government
Yeah.
would can that many people. Not oops, this is a tough time for workers, but deliberately put people out on the street. We haven't seen the result of this yet. We don't know how inflationary the tariffs are. We don't know how many government workers are going to lose their jobs. But go on Zillow right now in the Virginia, D.C. area, and you're going to see a whole lot of homes sitting there for sale. And that's a robust area with a lot of wealthy people who are worried about their future.
My understanding about Zillow is that they've now, instead of having individual home listings in the DC and Alexandria and Montgomery, Maryland area, each one of those little squares now can represent up to 25 houses for sale. I mean, it's staggering what's happening there. Um, looking out at the world, we have Russia in economic trouble because of the various bans and embargoes. But Germany has cut its interest rate, the central bank, to 1/2 point. I mean, that's an economy that's struggling. Arguably the most reliable economy in the world for the last 50 years. And yet they're now in a point where they're trying to revive that economy, and it doesn't seem to be responding. You look in China, and they're having the worst numbers they've had, since the Cultural Revolution. I mean, they're in big trouble, and the amount of exports has collapsed there. Can we, the Australian central bank? I've looked at the numbers all over the world, and everybody seems to be trying to fight a slow slide in their economies. Can the United States stand alone against that current?
It's a great question because we are all fairly interdependent. We do so much business with
Yeah,
Europe.
you
We
talked
do
about the
business.
world being flat. I mean,
Right, right. And that's why often, as we saw, say, in 2008, these recessions and depressions hit so many countries. And it's hard to stay out of the way, no matter where you are on the globe, of that sort of a thing. But look, 6 months ago, I would have told you, yeah, maybe the US can stand alone. We're still seeing job growth. We got out of inflation. Job wages are higher. It was just such a strong situation. Now, I mean, goodness, you watch the news and people are starting to Google, what is stagflation? We haven't been there in a long time. And so there is concern based on what we're doing here, but also based on what we're seeing overseas as well.
Okay, by the way, I want to correct myself. I don't know what I was talking about. OpenAI expects revenues to triple to 12.7 billion in 2025. So not quite what I was saying, but it's still pretty damn good for a company that didn't even exist a couple years ago. Okay, an interesting thing is a lot of big tech companies are about to embark on giant spending plans. Interesting time to invest capital, but oftentimes you stick to R&D spending and you stick to capital spending, even during hard times, because so you can come roaring out and not get left behind by the ones that kept on course going through this. So we have Amazon. It's going to increase its spending by 27% to $105 billion on new AI data sets. And and that was topped by Alphabet, which plans to increase its spending by 57% for a total of 75 billion. These companies are already, whatever's coming immediately in the near term, they're getting ready to come out on the far side, moving very, very fast. It's going to be hard to catch any company that invests 105 billion on its capital plant.
Well,
There's
one
not a
thing
we didn't
these
even
big
have that kind of money.
right, and that's the thing. These big tech companies are so incredibly flush with cash. It's it's amazing. We've never seen anything like this really in business history, and that makes them not only it gives them a shield of armor against bad times to an extent, but it also, like you say, allows them to spend through it and end up whatever is ahead, it's going to end up okay on the other end because it will have new capital and it's just got so much money. I mean, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, these companies are so cash rich. It's Meta. It's staggering.
I think what you want to be is applying for a job the day the economy turns around and they turn on all these plants. There's going to be a hiring boom when that happens. You
Well,
know,
unless all the plants are run by robots.
I was about to say that it just suddenly hit me. That may be the case. They may never turn the lights on. They'll just run in the dark. Okay, GameStop. GameStop is the squirreliest company I think we know. Um, up and down. I get my coffee at a place that's in a little strip mall, two doors from the Santa Clara GameStop store. And it's gone from being nearly empty to having lines out front over the last couple of years because of speculation, and now it's closed. It, Meanwhile, GameStop and its shares fell Thursday quite a bit because now they're saying, "Oh, we're not going to be in." I guess they're not saying they're going to. They're saying they're not going to be in the video game business. They're now going to become. They're issuing 1.3 billion in convertible bonds for general corporate purposes, quote unquote, but mostly to buy Bitcoin. Uh, what the hell?
Right. This is
What a way,
why
if you were a PR person and you had to write that boilerplate on all the press releases on what they do, this company is a leading manufacturer of, eyeglass frames or whatever. What would you put for GameStop?
right. I mean, a once big, then small, then giant, then small, then meme stock, then now we are buying Bitcoin at near $90,000 a coin. It's the reason why one store in that strip mall is closed and your coffee shop is still open because one stuck to its knitting for years and years and years. And the
Yeah.
other decided, I mean, it went from meme company to, well, from software company to meme company, and now it wants to buy Bitcoin. I can't imagine an investor thinking, I'm just going to let my money sit here and then put it towards my kid's college fund or a retirement fund. That's crazy right there.
I think the only people who do that share the same ADD as GameStop does. What a wacky place. Okay, in other stories, gold, another sign of potential economic downturn, gold has hit record highs and it's doing it by the day. Every time I look at the futures on gold, it's like 3,000 climbing, climbing.
Yeah, I've noticed something, and it's almost Pavlovian, like the dog that would respond to the
Sure.
thing, the bell. When Trump says he's going to add a tax, stocks go down, gold goes up. And then, we might pull back on that tax because we're feeling better about, I don't know, fentanyl or whatever. Dow goes up, gold gives back. And then we add more tariffs, stocks go down, and gold goes back up. There is clear what people mean when they say safe haven. Nobody knows what's going to go on with our economy because of all these tariffs. Will they be inflationary? Will they put businesses out of business? Will they cause layoffs? Will they help American business? Who knows?
And
Cloudiness hurts the stock market, but it does help something that's, boring and stable like gold. And so I think that's what we're seeing back and forth within the last month or so. Dow's off a couple thousand points. Gold hits a record high.
and
Who knows where they go from here?
gold is the ultimate safe harbor. It's been that
Right.
way for 10,000 years. Yeah. So
Perhaps.
I think we're going to see a rise in home invasions pretty soon if all that gold's being collected, especially
Well,
if we discover there isn't any in Fort Knox.
right. Maybe keep it in a safe deposit box, not in your house. I don't know.
Yeah,
Although apparently you can buy gold bars at Costco now. So it's
that's
become
what I
more mainstream.
understand.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting to hear of the first big robbery of Costco, and they came for the gold and the pizza slices, the hot dogs. Let's not
Very
forget
good.
that. What else? Oh, speaking of other squirrely companies, Robinhood. Robinhood now wants to be your bank, and they're talking about delivering your money to you.
Right.
Okay, so now we're going to see delivery cars, little tiny Fiats and stuff, being knocked over by by bank robbers. You don't need to be Jesse James. Uh, you can just go stop a delivery car and take your money from them.
This is weird on a lot of levels because Robinhood caters to young people. And
Yeah,
the idea to young people that you need cash delivered to you is bananas. When I tell my kids, oh, I'm going to the ATM, I need some cash, I may as well be telling them I'm going out to the yard to churn butter. They have
yeah,
no idea why anyone would need to go get their hands on cash. Everything is electronic. And they're
yeah.
right. Robinhood is one of the sort of companies that has brought all that to fore. You can trade easily. You just press a button and you're buying stocks. Everything is electronic. The idea that cash is going to be delivered, not in a Brinks truck, mind you, but just in some Uber or Lyft or something,
Yeah.
is not safe. And it goes against the grain of everything this company does, which is to show young people that everything is done electronically. I am baffled and I'm really curious to see who is going to say, I need cash and I want it hand delivered to my house by a driver of a regular old car. That's
With bags that have dollar signs on it.
yeah, well, hopefully not that. Yes.
Wasn't fintech invented to get around money? And
Yes.
yeah,
As
so
was cryptocurrency, sure.
yeah, well, maybe they'll deliver the paperwork for your Bitcoin that you're buying from a GameStop.
I
Maybe
mean,
that's a
I think Robinhood in the same week, if not the same day, had a promotion both for gold, the ultimate in you don't need any
yeah,
cash, and we will drive cash to your door. So they're really going in all sorts of strange directions, as is GameStop. Maybe that's the theme these days is try to come
diverse.
up with something to surprise investors.
And I predict a whole new career that could create a lot of jobs, which is riding shotgun on a Toyota Corolla, delivering small amounts of money to frat houses.
Yeah, it's the new task rabbit. Absolutely.
Okay, and finally, uh, 23andMe declares bankruptcy. I mean, it was such a big deal. It had the Google founder connection and all of that. And the question now is, where does all of that data they gathered from all of us go?
Yeah, this is what I thought you would lead with. This was an interesting story this week, and
I saved it for
so
the end
I
because it's so wacky.
it's really interesting because it's got the promising company goes down the tubes. Founder wants to buy the company, take it private. The board says no. Founder steps down, says she may, we're talking Ann Wojcicki here, a very well respected person in Silicon Valley who has the money, and she's saying maybe she can still buy the company whose price, is decimated by the day. A $1.6 billion company, last I checked, was something like 15 million. I mean, a huge loss. Not the first time, as we know that uh, home technology in the biospace has struggled, but this one is going to hurt, and a lot of jobs have already been lost. And it's interesting. The main thing now is what happens to the data. I pinned on my Twitter page, by the way, the easy steps you can take to have your data deleted from 23andMe. So check out my Twitter page at Scott Budman. It's easy to do. I've done it. And I think it should be done just because we don't know what's next for the company.
Okay. Do you think she's going to buy it for pennies on the dollar and turn it around?
I don't know about the
I mean, the
turnaround
name's
part.
kind of sullied now. She might want to buy if she buys the records and then gives it a new name. She could, in theory, she got the money to turn it around to ride with it.
Right. And maybe there's a plan that they just weren't able to execute because of whatever, but it just, the business plan was rough. I mean, I found out I was actually one of the first people to do the spit thing because I did a story when they were a small startup. And, I found out, hey, got some people from Russia, got some people from Ireland. All these years later, surprisingly, that hasn't changed. So what do I need to go back for? This was
Yeah,
a
you're
one
done.
trick pony. Right. During that time, I've probably bought 5 iPhones, but never gave any more money to
Yeah.
23andMe. And it's a tough business plan when you help a customer once that doesn't really need any more help ever again.
Yeah, thanks for all the info. Bye. Except
Kind
they
of, yeah,
kept the info. That's the problem.
that's the problem. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So we're going to have to keep tracking that. Okay. That's it for now, folks. You can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can see Scott on Facebook and X. Be sure to visit his entry on X this week about what to do about your private information on 23andMe. And of course, you can see him almost every night, weeknight on NBC Bay Area, which is where he's sitting right now. And you can hear me regularly on the BBC World Radio show Business Matters. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.